Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're excited. I can't wait for you to kind of dive into where you've been at with health and wellness, how it's gotten you to the point that you're at now, and kind of sharing a little bit with our listeners about what you're doing currently, because I think there's a little something that is new, and I can't wait for you to share that. So if you would, could you currently share with us what you're currently doing in kind of the health and wellness space with your IHP certification?
Yeah, so I currently have my own one-on-one wellness practice. It's called One Happy Cal. I'm also doing corporate wellness workshops for a company in New York City. And that's kind of cool. I like doing that a lot. It can just reach a lot more people than just, one person at a time. So that's nice. And I also have an Etsy store where I blend my handmade skincare products and things like that and sell them at the farmers market as well.
Okay, that's great. The corporate wellness, I actually did that years and years ago, but I loved it too, because like these are all people that are just like sitting in cubicles or sitting behind desks all day and, kind of just doing like the 9 to 5 grind. And you can kind of give them, so many tips on kind of how to just optimize their health throughout the day. But those are oftentimes the more sedentary people that kind of need to hear what we have to say even a little bit more.
Definitely. Just little tips. I give such foundational little tips, and they were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, and it kind of like makes their whole week, and they start doing it, and I get a lot of good feedback from it. So I enjoy it. It's a really good time. I'm going to start doing them weekly actually pretty soon. So
yes. Yeah. And we forget, because when we're immersed in this like IHP culture, we are just surrounded by so many people that know all like the things, and we can kind of forget that these little foundational tips, even though they seem so simple to us, can kind of be life-changing and eye-opening for people who have no idea about health and wellness and are kind of just like nose to the grindstone, and they don't think about their health at all. And so you can be super helpful with just simple things that seem so like, foundational to us.
Definitely. I see that all the time. And I try to, take a step back sometimes, because I do often forget that, I'm so far into it that I really need to pull myself back and, okay, let's drink some water and, just walk outside and get some fresh air, things like that. So there's just so many people that aren't doing the foundational things. And it's so important. I, remember when I first started that I was kind of, reaching for all of these supplements and just things that aren't really foundational. Like I wasn't, exercising like I should have been. I wasn't, just taking care of myself like foundationally with all the things. I didn't have an air purifier, just like simple things like that. And I think sometimes we can, reach for like superfoods or these extravagant supplements, and we're not even hitting those foundational pieces that are so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Which then just further complicates it over time. And, people who, again, get easily overwhelmed by this stuff, if you overcomplicate it, you kind of lose them. And so keeping it super simple, I think, is a really, good way to kind of keep people engaged. So that's awesome. If you could share with our listeners kind of how you got started in this space, is it something you've always wanted to do? What kind of got you to the point where you enrolled in IHP and kind of wanted to do this for a living?
Yeah, so it's been about 8.5 years or so, I would say. And I was on birth control for several years for my skin. My skin would break out. I was told, take birth control, it'll clear up, which it did. But, eventually after, a few years, and then also getting breast implants, I just started to, gain a lot of weight. And honestly, I don't even think it was weight. I think it was just completely inflammation. I was so inflamed. My face was like round, looked like a basketball, honestly. I just was so inflamed and I was so uncomfortable. My mood was like all over the place. My cycle was crazy. Like I just had so many hormone imbalances. And, I just wanted to feel better. And I knew that the birth control was really impacting me. So I just stopped taking it, which I totally don't recommend anyone do that's listening to this for sure. Giving your liver some support and, making sure your gut's in a good place are really great before trying to come off, and, dosing off correctly also, just because, stopping cold, it sent me for a ride. So my skin plastered in acne, like 100%, and I could not get it cleared up for years. I, tried everything, all of the things, and nothing was helping. It was honestly just getting worse because I was just so super stressed. The emotional side of it was crazy. Like I just didn't want to, talk to anyone. I didn't want to do anything because my face, it hurt. It was painful. And once I had the breast implants in, that just kind of led to a whole new set of problems. I started to get eczema on my legs. I was just, chronically fatigued. So many symptoms. I actually have a notebook, and it has like pages and pages and pages of symptoms that I was having because I had to like organize my thoughts. And I'm like, wow, I just have so many things going on. Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And it was very, very overwhelming. And I wish I had someone doing what I was doing when, I needed that, because I didn't. And I was just going down, the Google rabbit hole and, reading a ton of books, which that's all great. But then you have all of this information. It's so overwhelming. One thing contradicts another thing. And you just, you read about going back to like a supplement. This supplement's so great, here are all the benefits, but then you read something, literally minutes later, that's like, wow, you shouldn't take that ever. So there's just so much to it. And, it's very, very overwhelming. So I like to definitely start foundationally with clients, basic things, a water filter, air purifier, getting fresh air, exercise, sunlight, things like that. Because I was missing part of that and, trying to do so many other things. Also giving yourself some, grace too, because it's so hard, especially when people are kind of like, what are you doing? That's weird. Or you shouldn't do that. You should just go to the doctor. And, I was told that for a very, very long time. And I just was like, no, that's, not good enough. That's not what I'm going to do. I've been to the doctor before, and it was kind of just, you get on this like perpetual hamster wheel and just keep going and going and going and going. Eventually that's all you talk about is the doctor and your health condition. And I didn't want to, do that. So I was to the point where I was just all over the place. I lived in Las Vegas at the time. And when I was out there, my dad was actually diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So now we have, coming off of birth control, the breast implants making me sick, and then the extreme amount of stress from, a family member having stage 4 cancer. All of that was like literally a perfect storm for me to like erupt. So I ended up moving back across the country, back to New York, to my hometown, helping my dad, taking care of him. But I just remember being so stressed, and, when you're stressed, your hormones definitely take a hit. I was just so lost, so confused. I was considering hormone replacement therapy for, a couple of weeks. And finally I, settled myself down. I'm like, okay, what are you doing? I did a lab test, and this was for the hormone replacement therapy. So it wasn't like a functional lab or anything. It was kind of just blood work. And I saw that my liver enzymes were so high. My estrogen was really, really extremely high. My progesterone was like nothing. Just so many imbalances. And that kind of like, then I started to realize like, wow, what has happened? I need to take care of this. And so I was YouTubing a bunch of, hormone videos, things like that. And I ended up coming across Dr. Cabral, not on his podcast, but on Mind Body Pump. And I think it was when I was looking into the hormone replacement therapy, and I was like, what is this? And so he was talking to them, and I remember him saying, well, why are your hormones imbalanced in the first place? And it's not like, so that kind of, rang a bell, and I was just like, okay, that makes sense. And he was just answering questions like one after another. And I was just like, who is this guy? Like, this is crazy. So I looked him up, and he has this whole podcast and this like certification program and just all of these things, good quality functional medicine supplements. And so I was like, wow. And so I instantly signed up for the certification because I was just like, I need this. He's answering so many of my questions already in like 1 5-minute YouTube video. I can't even imagine
that you weren't even asking.
Yeah.
He was answering the questions that you weren't even asking, but you were just sitting there thinking them. And you're like, oh, I love when that happens. Or you're like, that's exactly what I like. How come nobody else has told me this before?
Yeah, exactly. And so it all started making sense. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe this. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not doing hormone replacement therapy. I don't need that. And I'm so glad that I did, because, when you go on that, it's very, very difficult to come off. And so I signed up for, level 1 and 2. And then from there, it's been about 1.5 years now. But I signed up like right after I quit my previous job. I was waitressing for a while. When I moved back from Vegas, when I was trying to take care of my dad, I just needed kind of a job to not worry about things and all of that. And I ended up doing that. Unfortunately, it didn't align with anything that I was trying to accomplish or that I wanted to do. So I finally ended up leaving there. It's been, a little over 1.5 years ago, but that's when I really started to gain momentum. I could actually like think straight. I wasn't like so stressed out, miserable and unhappy, because doing something that's not aligned with what you're trying to do is so difficult, especially when you have everyone going against you and you're trying so hard to, feel better and get well and do all the right things. And that's so much easier when you have like a support system. My fiance has been like the biggest support over the past, we've been together now like seven years or so, but honestly, without him, I don't know. He's really gave me a lot of strength to get through this when everyone's kind of like against you, not really against you, but that's what it feels like. Right. So it's just so hard. But as you keep learning and, you kind of go down this like rabbit hole and you start to develop, a certain degree of anxiety, because it's like, wow, we're told all of these things and it seems like none of them are right or good at all. And going back to the birth control, the breast implants, like there's just absolutely no informed consent at all. Zero. It's like, okay, here are a couple side effects, but it's kind of brushed off and it's not really talked about. Like, no, these can impact you for the rest of your life if you don't, go through all of these steps to, rebalance your body and, correct everything. Same thing with the breast implants. I think I was 21 when I got them in, and I'm not sure. It's definitely more talked about now, but when I had, this was like 9, almost 10 years ago. And when I got them in, I didn't hear anyone saying like, oh, you're bad, or these can impact your health like this or anything. I remember my mom, she was like, you really shouldn't get though. And, I'm 20, I'm not going to listen to her. So, which I wish I would have, of course, but yeah, they didn't go over anything. They're like, here's a stack of papers, just sign them and you'll be good to go. I haven't had one have any issues with these. And what size do you want,
Yes. And the truth is I feel like everybody kind of looks at side effects as major life altering side effects. Like, are you paralyzed? Are you, do you pass away from implants? Do you have some sort of life altering, event that would create some sort of like pause for caution? And the truth is, most people don't have major, major, major fallouts. Over time, people can get incredibly sick from them, but like that's an accumulation. And even there's so many people that don't correlate the fact that it's the implants with their sickness until they come across some sort of literature like this. And I would almost argue, that I think that there definitely is certainly a lot more education and a lot more awareness around breast implant illness now, but you probably weren't in the space of people that were talking about it when you were 21, even if there was some chatter, right? And so it all depends on kind of like who you're around, what people are talking about. But I couldn't agree more with the informed consent. I mean, that is my like soapbox when it comes to everything, right? Because whether we're talking about birth control, implants, vaccines, like you name it, I believe everybody should do what they feel is best for them. I am not pro anything other than everybody should be given a factual, right? Not like this dumbed down version, but a factual representation of what can happen long term. And even if the side effects are fatigue, acne, hormone issues, maybe a hard time getting pregnant and inflammation, like all of those things should be listed. But because those aren't like actual medical conditions, the medical establishment doesn't really acknowledge them as like a quote unquote symptom, right? It would have to be something medical, right, that goes wrong. And there's not always that, it's more of this mysterious, like, I just do not feel well. And something is wrong and I don't know what it is. But I think that informed consent is such a huge part of it. But of course, this is a business, for people, whether it's birth control, whether we're talking about big pharma or we're talking about plastic surgeons, it's a business and people want to sell their product. And so they're not going to tell you all the things that could go wrong. They're just going to kind of do what they did to you and give you a stack of papers and ask you what size. And it's, again, when we talk about age, I think the whole, you're just not thinking like down the line, right? And so a mother who's wise and like knows what happens, throughout life says like, oh, it's not a good idea to do it. But you're like, oh, what the heck? Because we tend to live in the moment. And the truth is had you never gone through that experience, you may not have been kind of catapulted into the realm that you're in now. So you can almost kind of look at it as like it was part of getting you to where you're at. But it's, so interesting that all of those. Now, when you went through the whole like birth control process and you came off of that, you were kind of purely just researching your own like methods as to kind of how to support your system. And it wasn't until you came across Dr. Cabral that you like actually found something tangible. And that's when you went into IHP, correct? There was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I came off of birth control. It's been about 7 years now. So it took like a long time. Just so many things. And I was just looking at so many different things. I was so confused. I was, eating a good diet. Like my diet's been, really, really great for so many years. But the issue is like, I, would bloat after I had like a piece of lettuce or like I was eating kind of like I went vegan for like a long time, not a really long time, but like that wasn't the best for my hormones, obviously. I went keto for a little bit because that was a thing that, made things worse. There's just so many different things and everyone's like, oh, what kind of diet are you on? Like worry about that. But it's like, no, we just have to eat like a whole food diet. And if you're having gut-based issues, then there's something deeper happening. It's not, that. So I never started to kind of get the answers I was looking for until I, did the functional medicine, lab tests and discovered, wow, I have bacterial overgrowth. I have yeast overgrowth, which, can come from, all the stress and the birth control use and, mold toxicity, which can come from the breast implants, just so many things that, were inflaming my system. But it took me years of trial and error and trying to see, what was working, what was not, things worked for a little bit, and then I kind of like fell back. And the one thing, it's just the stress. The stress is what really was the driver, because, the stress from just cold turkey coming off a medication that, is controlling your hormones is crazy. And, having a foreign object in your body is a lot. And then, having your dad go through, like just everything that's related with the cancer. And I remember just I moved back home and I was sitting there with him and the doctor, and I just had so much anxiety and fear, and I like literally didn't know how to help him. And that was not okay with me. And so that drove me even further, because I was just like, I want to be able to help my parents and like at least give them guidance on what to do, not like, because we get fear mongered by all of these people, right? It's like, you just get talked into stuff and you're like, okay, I'll do whatever because I'm scared and I'm afraid, but like, there's really nothing to be afraid of when you have the knowledge behind it. So like, knowledge is power. And, when you have that, you aren't scared, because, like, okay, I can take these steps to, rebalance the body and take care of it. And, if your body's healthy and balanced, you're not going to have that cancer. And unfortunately, there's so many people today, getting some type of disease, whether, it's cancer or diabetes or heart disease or whatever it may be, because of, all of these toxins and all of the stress and just our lifestyles in general. Social media, I'm grateful for social media, because, Instagram is where I started to, really kind of learn like, wow, these people are talking about this, and this, like, maybe I should look into that. But at the same time, it can be so toxic. So, for anyone that's listening, just making sure you're definitely following the people that inspire you, and not the people that make you feel like you're not, good enough or you can't do this. Because a lot of the times, even with clients, like, the mindset around what they're trying to do can really, hold a person back. And I think that's why I, was able to pull myself out, because the entire time, the one thing I did have was my mindset. And I was like, whatever it takes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, clear out my skin. I'm going to get these implants out. And so just believing in yourself, and having just a good mindset, and whatever that looks like for you, and whatever it takes. Also, going back to the breast implants, I know I'm jumping all over here, but when I had them removed, a few years ago now. When I had them removed, the surgeon ended up nicking my artery. And so I had like this huge, like, basically burst. My artery burst like a couple weeks later. So my right side just started filling with blood. And that's another thing, like, not only the breast implants can cause all of these symptoms because they're not good. The other side of it, that you have to get them replaced quite often. It's every 8 to 10 years, I believe. And I wasn't getting them replaced. Obviously, I was just getting them out, but that happened, and I had to have another surgery about 2 weeks later, a little less. And now I have like severe like spasms in my side. It's kind of around my subscapularis area in my back, kind of in my chest, but I go to the chiropractor weekly. I get massages every couple of weeks. I've done, a lot of different things, because it will just fire if I try to use it. When I work out, I go really lightweight. And because if I try to lift heavy, it will spaz like for days. So not only do you have to worry about the side effects from just having them, it's like, okay, how about these surgeries and like, the antibiotics you have to take while, going through these surgeries, and just, there's so many things. So many things.
Yes. Yeah. And so many complications that can arise. Right. And there's risks, there's benefits, there's, for some people, they're like, oh, the, risk of what could happen with a surgery is is, outweighing, or the risk doesn't bother me as much as, the way that I look. And so some people will risk those things for the benefit of, the getting the surgery, which is a total personal decision. But knowing, right, just simply having the facts of, hey, and just so you know, in 8 to 10 years, you'll need to have them replaced, another surgery. But they probably don't even talk about that initially, because it's like, let's just get the first set in, and then in 6 years, I'll tell you need another one. And so again, if all the information and all of, we're even having a board with stories of people who have had success with them, and a board of, stories of people who have not had success with them, and allowing, clients to make their own choices to, what they feel most comfortable about. But we're kind of always given this kind of one-sided picture that can kind of steer us in the direction of the quote unquote product that someone's trying to sell, right? You brought up something else that I love that I kind of want to touch upon, and you kind of like talked about it in two different ways. One was kind of how you were in the doctor's office and you were incredibly fearful, and, you were scared, and kind of how that propelled you probably to want to know more. And I think the one thing that IHP does, whether or not you end up becoming a health practitioner as a career and starting a business and having this big full-blown practice, or whether you simply just instill hope in the people you love, because like you said, we are when you're in the medical system, a majority of it is kind of, we know more, here's what you need to do, shush and just do what we're telling you. And if someone doesn't have kind of that innate fire inside to either ask questions or empower themselves, or even have the right mindset, even a treatment that may be helpful and necessary, going into it with a fear mindset is incredibly different going into it with some sort of empowerment, like, I can do this. And an episode that aired a few weeks back, Krista, she was kind of talking about how she had brain surgery. And she believes that, like, while yes, the brain surgery was a huge part of her healing process, her mindset going into the surgery is what she really thinks kind of set her recovery apart from potentially a different, outcome. And so I think it's so important to like understand that, like, as IHPs, just being able to kind of help a mom or dad, or help a good friend, or help yourself, to just instill some sort of power, knowledge, and, that mindset of, you can do this. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to do anything that doesn't feel right, because you have choices, is honestly one of my favorite parts of kind of what IHP does, and how Dr. Cabral, like, his mission is to have one in every home, because then truly you will have a much different outcome in what people choose to kind of, how they choose to take care of themselves, and how they choose to deal with the quote unquote diseases that may or may not arise.
Definitely. And IHP is so much different. I have previous coaching certifications, and they're just so broad. I did not feel confident in helping someone with just having those. And, now I really, IHP led to like so many other things. And, now I have a practice, and, Dr. Ball says, if you have one person, you have 10, if you have 10, you have, a lot more. That's so true, because you have one person. I started with one person, and I don't even know how many I have now, to be honest, or have had. And just, I don't know, it's just helping, people and getting those referrals. And everyone is so like, what's the word? I don't even know.
Probably grateful. I mean, I think most people that because so many people are in the position where you were 7 years ago, where they are probably like floundering about, trying to figure things out for themselves. And even if they have some, basic knowledge, or they're following someone on Instagram who is good and giving them good advice, to have someone say, here's what's wrong. Here's what's imbalanced. These are what the labs are showing us. This is what we need to do about it. I'm here to support you and see your progress through. Like, that's what people need. We're just in a world where there's so much noise. There's so much other stuff that people need to do, that tackling their health and wellness on their own can be such a daunting task. And so what do people do when something's overwhelming? They do nothing. And having somebody to kind of just be guided in the right direction. I mean, I would say that that's the number one emotion I get from clients, like, just thank you. And even there are people who are in IHP1 and they still need, I mean, I sometimes bring my personal labs to Dr. Cabral. I'm like, can you help? I'm just like, I can't deal with myself, like, because when we're trying to help ourselves, it feels so different than when we're trying to help someone else. And so people just are you're met with gratitude for what you're able to kind of guide them through, because it's hard to do on your own.
Yeah, for sure. It's so hard to, I can help people all day, but I'm still, going through, my own stuff. And it's been, 8.5 years or so. And it just, once you know something, it's like, wow, I don't know this and this. And it's just like, the more you know, the more you don't know. I really, believe that. And it's crazy and it's a little bit overwhelming, but yeah, just everyone just needs to start somewhere. Honestly, I think that, it is overwhelming with the world the way it is, and just how we're taught and how things are so normalized that really aren't normal. Like it's not normal to eat, junk food all day and feel like crap. It's not normal to have, acne all over your face. It's not normal to be bloated after you have like 2 bites of food. I have clients that, don't go to the bathroom for like a couple of weeks. Like that's not normal. It's common, but like, we're just taught like, oh, it's normal. And this is just what's happening to me, and my body's messing up. And really it's just trying to tell us, I need a little bit of, TLC, like I need some attention, please help me. And instead of and this is funny because I had this friend in high school. I'm really good friends with her now still, actually, but I remember driving in her car one time, and it was like after work one night, and her car was making like this weird sound. And I remember her saying like, oh, it's fine. I just turn up the radio and I don't even hear it. That's literally what we're doing with, everything. It's like we ignore the situation with, whether it be drugs, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, cigarettes, or whatever. And, it's so common, but it's not normal. It's not normal to be, living like that and not eating healthy and just feeling like crap all day. I mean, you don't want to feel like crap all day. I talk to people all the time and they're like, I just want my life back. I don't feel well because, when your rain barrel starts to overflow, then, all these symptoms just come at once, and it can get really crazy for, a lot of people, especially. I think the only thing that saved me, to be honest, because I was a wreck, was my diet. Like I was still supporting my body in those areas. And I think, just the diet and just kind of knowing the things to do, drinking water and the things like that, that's what saved me. Because I think if I was like eating pizza all the time and like junk food and things like that, I would have been in trouble because I already had all of these symptoms with eating like a very, very, very good diet. So I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep. And we live in a society where there are more options than ever to create radio noise. And there's just a gazillion ways that you could turn up the radio. And a lot of them are socially accepted. I mean, sometimes more socially accepted than like eating healthy, right? Or like, I get like all the time, like, oh, you're rabbit food. I'm like, it's not rabbit food. Yeah. It's a salad. Okay. It actually was grown in the ground. And so like, we'll be like family members like, oh, you're feeding your kids like those seaweed crackers again. I'm like, they're seaweed snacks. My kids absolutely love them. Like, I'm not forcing them to eat them.
Yeah.
But it's actually more socially acceptable to like drink 2 glasses of wine every single night to calm down. Like nobody bats an eyelash at that. So it's amazing what our society has kind of deemed like normal noise, bad noise, so it's just, we live in a world where we really have to be in tune to kind of where we're at, what we need, and kind of being able to find that place for ourselves. I would love for you to share with our listeners, if they're kind of listening and want to kind of find more about you, where they could find you on social media or a website. And then also if you would share your Etsy store where you kind of make your homemade skin products and whatnot?
Yeah, of course. So Instagram, just One Happy Cal. And then same thing with Etsy. It's just at One Happy Cal. And both places you can find me. The skincare is really great. I use, all natural ingredients. Nothing is synthetic or has chemicals in it or anything like that. That's one thing I really, what we put on our skin is even more important than what we're eating, to be honest, because it goes directly in your bloodstream, right? So I make sure, everything is made by me personally, and everything is in glass bottles, bamboo, like just really high quality material. So yeah, that's at One Happy Cal, and Instagram as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. This was such a great and informative conversation. And I think we probably empowered a few women for sure. And I thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Thanks,
Bye.
Michelle.
Thank you.